All hail the mighty. Yes, that's right. We've got Vampire Coast here in this Warhammer World Championship group stage replay. We're going to jump into a series between Codex of XMT and Berserk of the VM clan. Both very experienced, very good players. Very interesting to see how their contrasting styles will play out in this battle and in this series overall. Of course, it's a best of 3, but the loser does not get eliminated. We're in a Swiss-style group stage, what they call Swiss-style, similar to the group stage of the World Cup, where you play each opponent, and then depending on the results, the top few go through. So, Vampire Coast today for Codex here. He's got polearm gun mobs, or not gun mobs, he's got polearms and gun mobs, and hand weapon mobs, some more ghouls to protect, a couple of long guns, some deck guns here as well. And that's basically it. Yeah, handguns, shotguns mixed in there. Taking some fire from Khorne already, but we see, yeah, the Gaze of Nagash in response. Vampire Admiral with polearm. And for that Gaze of Nagash, he's also got Invocation of Ne'ek and Wand of Jet for some extra power recharge. Then for Khorne, Berserk coming in here very slowly and cautiously, trying to get in position with his Marauders. He's got Skull Taker here, some Khorngors, plenty of Marauders, Blood Wake Berserker Wrathmongers, and some Furies also up in the sky, descending from the Tower of Hoeth here. Let's see how this Khorne Rush build can handle this multi-layered onion defense build. Of course, it's Conquest, so the Vampire Coast did come up and seize the Conquest objective to try and claim initiative. Long-range shooting also kind of helps them claim initiative here, but Wrathmongers get some protection from this little hill here, and also from the Marauders, which are running on through. They're going to have to run through some friendly fire a little bit here as they advance, but going to get into contact. The rest of the army, rather than engaging everything all at once, curiously, Berserk is going to pull back this section of the army, which does mean that the rest of the gun units here, of which there are very many, are free to turn and fire into Khorne forces as they advance. Yeah, these Furies not even really going to make contact, which is definitely a huge loss, both in terms of value and tactically. They could have come in and done some good damage to those gun units, but instead the gun units are shooting back hard. Just that overwhelming volume of fire makes it very tough to approach for the Khorne units without taking massive damage. But they're going to give it their best. We see some Marauders engaging here. They are able to tear apart the zombies relatively quickly. Khorngors also trying to get through and get onto these missile units, but that short-range, point-blank fire, absolutely devastating, with the shotguns in particular. But the Marauders also find a flank to charge on in with the Furies, trying to just damage some of these units off the field very quickly. But Undead Crumbling coming back to haunt forces of Khorne, as many of these units will, of course, continue to fight as they are quote-unquote routing. And that will hold up the Khorne forces that much longer and allow them to get shot in a build like this. Especially, it's pretty painful to be on the receiving end of the Undead mechanics. This is mainly one of the reasons why I'm an Undead hater, is because they can do stuff like this, which granted, it's part of the faction identity for Vampire Coast to be able to just set up this massive gun line and yet slowly have to slog through it while getting shot in the face. That is, to a degree, definitely their faction identity. But yeah, the fact that the crumbling exists in its current state, it's never really been changed in any meaningful way. This means that the undead absolutely feast. Speaking of feasting, though, Khorne was able to grind through that entire half of the army pretty much, with many units still intact, but actually Skull Taker is taking a lot of damage here. Surprisingly, getting focus fired pretty effectively by zombies. I guess even though they're low accuracy, there's just such a high volume of fire when they focus fire on him. Super painful. Also super painful is the shooting. Shotguns up close. Man, Sword of Khorne going to get dropped and basically just destroy one entire unit instantly. But the rest of the shotguns and guns just absolutely making the Marauders' lives miserable. Marauders just straight up route there. The Khorngors probably next. Bloodwake Berserkers doing a pretty decent job, but actually the 2v1 with the Mournghouls is not a great engagement for them. It's probably the ideal situation for Vampire Coast to get these guys isolated, and like I said, 2v1 is just so many bodies for them to handle. Not used to being outnumbered by big armor-piercing entities like this, so not a great situation. Another Gaze into Gash, and Berserk's going to throw in the towel there. We'll jump in game 2 between these two and see if he can get back even on the series, but a very interesting one for sure. Like I said, very contrasting styles. I do think Berserk maybe miscalculated a little bit in pulling back his left side and engaging it just a little bit later. I don't know. He didn't really have the numbers to go all in, and that was maybe part of the problem here, that Codex just had so much shooting that Berserk couldn't account for, given his army was a full 5 units less in size, and he still has to account for melee units, you know, shocking through the pole arms and whatnot. Overall, the value is going to be coming in definitely on the handguns, a little bit on the deck guns, and maybe a little bit on the shotguns as well. But yeah, just spread all across the different different guns and so forth. Yeah, as for Berserk, not a ton of value on any individual units here. Pretty tough performance from him, but let's see if he can get even on the next one. Some good performance from the mobility units. Maybe just needed more of these Khorne Horsemen, honestly, but yeah, let's see what they can do in the next matchup. From one defensive onion to the next, we've got, well, more of an offensive onion, to be honest. Another slow plotting gun faction here from Codex. Another massive firepower. This time he doesn't have any long-range poke, so he is going to have to get close. Trollhammer torpedoes do have pretty good range. I mean, they're basically like longbow range, right? At 170. Anti-large armor piercing. Very small explosive missiles. Going to be great versus large targets. And then, of course, we've got the Drakes. The fire Drakes, actually. They're all Drakes. But the Iron Drakes with their flamethrowers. Obviously great anti-infantry. A couple of Giant Slayers. We've got a Lord and some Miners as speed bumps. And that's basically it up against this Beastmen army, which has gone big old spread, looking to get a full surround here and try and collapse this Dwarven Onion. Summoned up, we've got a Cygor coming here. Some Tuskor Chariots, Spray Shaman of Wild here in the center. Hidden, more Tuskor Chariots, little Ungors. Pushing up and around the flanks, we've got Pestigors on this side. Cockatrice, very interesting choice. Kind of like it, though. We've got some Pestigor herds as well. And some Warhounds currently getting hit by those Trollhammer torpedoes. Centaur's throwing axes there in the back. But I'm not really sure what the plan is with this Cygor. He's going to run up and start throwing some rocks. But he does run within range of Trollhammer torpedoes. And it is going to do some very effective damage. You can see there that single rock toss, especially on that blockier formation. Trollhammer torpedoes take massive damage. They don't have a ton of HP. They don't have a ton of unit models. One of the lowest HP units in the game overall, just because of that low model count. Definitely don't want to be taking too many direct hits. Yeah, you can see Codex kind of dodging there, spreading out the unit that he thinks is being targeted. But the Trollhammers this whole time are just kind of plinking away. From a build perspective, the Ungor herds are a super interesting choice. I mean, their stats are really pretty poor, to be honest. They do have stock. They could run in the back line and maybe attack some skirmishers or some artillery crews. You know, they might trade okay against some Slayer types, even just given how cheap they are. They're still going to lose, but yeah, they might trade somewhat cost effectively there. Hard to say, but I don't know. It's just tough spending on a unit that you know is going to be good again. It's going to be bad, rather, against like 80 to 90% of your opponent's roster. The Ungor is just not having the stats, especially the armor piercing. And even regular Gors will struggle in terms of just not having armor piercing, not having enough quality. The Pestigors makes a lot of sense. The Chariots makes a lot of sense. I don't know. Maybe given the map, I also would have gone with like double Cygor, actually. Put one Cygor on each hill and then just really force the Dwarves to kind of pick and choose and pull them apart. Summon Cygor was an interesting play, but didn't generate a ton of value. Yeah, that's almost 800 value. That's pretty good. I mean, if you got that much value from a single like AoE damage spell, you'd be decently happy, but it is very expensive to summon those Cygors in terms of the Winds of Magic cost, so tough there. And, you know, hindsight 2020, Cygors can be a little bit tough. I guess you don't see a ton of cannon builds these days. I don't know. I personally would probably go with the double Cygor here, as I'm a big fan of that particular build setup, just to really, really make Dwarf Infantry have a bad time. That's basically all they got. But once again, Codex going to move up and secure the objective here. This conquest game going to be forced into action by that action. And the Cockatrice comes in somewhat unsupported. It's going to feint a quick charge and then pulls away. But not all the Trollhammer torpedoes, but just the focus fire in general has been a pretty bad problem. One Fire Drake is going to get turned around, though, is not ready to fire in at the front line charge from the Vestigors and the Pestigors. Yeah, Vestigors have some armor, so they're not going to get absolutely roasted. Although the knockback does, as you can see there, blast quite a few of their unit models and kind of prevent them from getting a super clean charge, which is one of the strengths of any Beastman unit, but Pestigors in particular really want to get that nice charge bonus. Speaking of which, Tuscarora Chariots running through. Chaos Warhounds failing to make contact as the Ungor herds. Pestigors also charge up and around the flanks, trying to get in contact with every weapons team basically at the same time. Not going to be super successful on this left side here. The Dwarven left side holding great as the Trollhammer torpedoes. Fire Drakes push back the Cockatrice and the Chariots. Ungor Horror is running in, but they can't do more than just get absolutely roasted here, I think. That said, the Pestigors just bypassing the Slayers, trying to get on those Iron Drakes. And quite a few of the Iron Drakes are down, but oh no, it's a disaster. Bray Shaman gets absolutely just nuked up close. Trollhammer torpedoes blow him up in a matter of seconds. I mean, that was straight up 100 to 0 in like 3 or 4 seconds. That was insane. And with that, Berserk is going to throw in the towel there. Understandably, maybe he still had a chance to win, just given the number of best scores. Pest scores that were still alive, maybe could have cut through all those weapon teams. Although, with the Fire Drakes still alive, the number of them, and the Giant Slayers still being basically untouched, definitely hard to say. Dwarf Lord also could grind through quite a few on his own. So, yeah, tough one for Berserk. I think he just, in both battles, was kind of not very prepared to face this overwhelming firepower onion type build. Which, credit to Codex, had a similar-ish build in both games and managed to play them to very good effect. To go 2-0 on the series and take the victory. Here was definitely the Trollhammer torpedoes taking out high-value targets that sealed the deal, but, had the game gone on a little bit further, I'm sure the Fire Drakes would have also paid for themselves. Interesting one for sure. I really like it from Codex. A little bit risky, a little bit aggressive, but potentially can pay off, as we've seen with a lot of, Slades like Rank 9 replays in the past. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that overwhelming firepower can be very tough to deal with for players, especially if you're not expecting it. And that's something that we'll likely see a lot more of in the coming years as 40k drops and we see more shooting Total War. But definitely a fun one for sure. Interesting series, interesting games. Hopefully you enjoyed them. Thanks to Codex for actually giving me a heads up on the series. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. And I will continue to bring you more excellent tournament content. So stay tuned for that. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.